Hey, it's Radisha, your favorite real estate broker, and today I want to talk to you about short-term rentals. A few years ago, when certain platforms came out promoting short-term rentals of people's personal property, for profit, it was a lot that was going on. There was controversy, hotels had an issue, etc., right? And then the process became more streamlined. So I probably won't mention those platforms' names, or I don't know. We'll see how the video goes, right? But there are certain things that I want to talk to you about when securing real estate for that purpose, specifically of having short-term rentals. It's not the way that it was when the industry first introduced it, right? So if you're interested in purchasing a property for short-term rentals, I like short-term rentals because you don't have to worry about evicting people. It's kind of like the hotel process. You pay for the time that you have, and afterwards you got to get out, right? So you don't really have to deal with evictions and stuff like that. But there are other things that you have to consider from the state and local level, different municipalities, etc. So these are the things that I want you to consider if you're interested in purchasing a property specifically for the purpose of short-term rentals, which are really profitable, right? The first thing is getting licensed at the state level, right? So the department, I'm in Florida, so I have to use DBPR, the Department of Business and Professional Regulations, right? You have to get licensed with them. But you also have to make sure that you're licensed on a local level, wherever your property is. So I am in South Florida, for instance. So we have Fort Lauderdale, Miramar, Miami, Miami Lakes, Miami Beach. There's so many different cities, towns, municipalities to list. I won't list them, but you have to understand which areas allow it. So you have to look at local zoning regulations. So it's no longer, okay, it's my property, I bought it, I want to lease it for short-term rentals. You have to understand if your area allows that. So it's one thing to be licensed on a state level, but you have to also make sure that where your property is located, that the local zoning regulations allow that to take place. So the zoning laws change also. So at one point you might be able to have short-term rentals, and if laws change, you might not be able to. So what are you going to do with that property? So always having a contingency plan, right? Then there may be occupancy limits to what you can do. So certain cities and states have occupancy limits for short-term rentals. So you have to be aware of what those are, and you don't want to exceed them. You need to understand the permitting and licensing requirements, and also when those changes take place. So just because you might be able to do something today does not mean that you will be able to do it tomorrow or next month. There are tax obligations that you also have to consider. So understanding your tax obligations, your occupancy taxes, your sales taxes, your income taxes, and how you need to collect and remit those taxes is very, very important. And making sure that you verify and report those accurately is very essential. So it's not just collecting money. I made some good money, and that's what the end of it. It's not the same. Also, insurance coverage. Do you understand the different insurance requirements that you need to have for that particular property to remain compliant? So you need to review your homeowner's insurance policy to ensure that it covers short-term rentals, and find out if you need to get additional coverage to cover your property in that case. Safety and building codes is also something else that you have to think about when using your property for short-term rentals, making sure that it complies, having smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, and meeting other safety standards. Neighborhood associations. Now, depending on where your property is, you might have a single-family home, you might have a condo. It varies. All properties are different, right? If you have a homeowners association, you have to understand if their bylaws allow you to have a short-term rental. And if it doesn't, then that means that even though it's your property, you can't use it for that particular purpose. So you want to make sure that you're not violating any rules that will cause you legal issues later on. Noise regulations. Familiarize yourself with noise regulations in the particular area where you are, and whatever ordinances they may have, so that you can communicate that to the people who may be renting your units, and make sure that they don't throw big parties and cause you problems later on. Then we have fair housing laws. So beware of federal and state fair housing laws prohibiting discrimination. You cannot discriminate against your guests based on race, gender, religion, disability, and other protected classes. When choosing to use your property as a short-term rental, you also want to make sure that you have and comply with health and safety inspections. Short-term rentals are they're subjected to those types of things, and ensure that your properties meet those standards. Then we have landlord-tenant laws. You need to understand the legal relationship between you and your guest, and making sure that you familiarize yourself with the terms of service with whatever platforms that you might be using. Business licensing. Depending on the scale of your short-term rental, you might need to register your business and comply with relevant business licensing and regulations. And again, I'm in the state of Florida, so the first one that you need to register your business with is the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, DBPR. The beeper is what we call it. You will also need to consider your local impact on your community. Consider if the impact of your short-term rental on your local community with housing availability and affordability. And some areas have implemented restrictions to address these particular concerns. Emergency and evacuation plans. So for a short-term rental, in the case, like especially South Florida, we have hurricanes, we have flooding, we have different things. You need to develop a clear emergency and evacuation plan for your guests to ensure that they're informed about safety procedures. Other things that you should have inside your unit are like, let's say, for instance, fire extinguishers, smoke detectors, and things of that nature. Are you familiarized with your local hosting rules? Some cities, and remember, every city, municipality, township, etc., has different rules. So the only way to know if your property, you're able to use it for a short-term rental, is to check their websites, to check their databases for that information, to consult them for that. Some cities have implemented specific rules or guidelines for hosts, such as providing emergency contact information in quiet hours, and comply with these rules as necessary. Neighbor relations is something else that you need to consider if you're using your property as a short-term rental. You want to maintain good relations with your neighbors. Communicate with them about your short-term rental activity if necessary, and address any concerns they may have promptly. Because at the end of the day, people need to be able to have an enjoyable use of their space. And if the guest that you have at your property is disturbing it, you might end up with problems. Another thing, environmental regulations is something that you have to take into consideration that apply to short-term rentals, such as waste disposal or water conservation measures. And one of the last things that I want to speak to you about, which is most definitely not the least, is legal counsel. Consult with a legal expert specializing in short-term rentals or local property laws to ensure compliance with all relevant regulations. So I want you to stay informed on the different laws concerning you using your property in a way that's profitable to you, but also making sure that you're not violating any particular laws. So I'm Radisha, your favorite real estate broker, talking to you about short-term rentals. And also, having a good property management company is essential so your success in that. Am I a property manager for short-term rentals? No, I'm not. But can I guide you to one? Most definitely I can. So I want you to make sure that you do not fail to comply with the different laws in your area that could result in fines, legal troubles, and damage to your property's reputation. So I'm Radisha, your favorite real estate broker with the Distinctive Lifestyle Real Estate Company, here for all of your buying, selling, and leasing needs in the real estate market.